Welcome to the Heart of Herbs Herbal School podcast, where we explore the fascinating world of herbal medicine and natural healing. I'm your host, Demetria Clark, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this journey of discovery. At Heart of Herbs Herbal School, we're passionate about empowering individuals to harness the power of plants for health and wellness. Through our podcast, we'll dive into topics ranging from herbal materia medicas, clinical herbalism, sharing insights, interviews, tips, and wisdom to inspire and educate our listeners. Hi, this is Demetria Clark, the director of Heart of Herbs Herbal School, and we are the Heart of Herbs Herbal School podcast. And today we are talking to Jamie Lamb, who is someone who's doing a lot of dynamic work in the birth and burgeoning herbal career. So it's really exciting to talk to her and to hear her perspective on things and why she does what she does. And so I'm really excited. So thank you so much for being here, Jamie. Can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm Jamie, and I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I have I think it was 2018, I started the pathwork of becoming a doula. So I own Birthway Doula. And halfway through that journey, I had some family members with some chronic illness and decided to branch into herbalism, and found that that was very needed within the birth community. So I'm in the middle of my clinical herbalism studies. So I'm really excited to continue venturing into that. My eyes have really been open to the need for this information, especially in the birth community and just local communities that don't have access to this information. So last year I launched Birthway Herbs, and that has been an adventure learning the retail side of herbalism.
That's always so much fun, right?
Yeah, right?
Where can people find you online?
They can find me at birthwayherbs.com or birthwaydoula.com.
Okay, cool. Because that's really, no one's going to be looking in the yellow pages anymore, right? So we need to know how to find you, especially if you're a birth worker and you're listening and you want access to some information. And do you sell products also?
Right now, just prenatal and postpartum tea blends.
Okay, so if you're a birth worker and you want to know and have access to something that's created by another birth worker, this is the place to go. A lot of people, I think you can just throw a tea together and there you go and you have it. And it's actually a lot more work than that. So when you can find a trusted resource, it's really, really important. I used to sell a lot of products to midwives because I had just gotten the reputation that I was an okay place to go to, because there's so many things out there. And are you seeing that there's still a lot of, quote, protocols in the birth world, like take 6 of these caplets for 6 weeks and you'll give birth at 38 weeks or whatever, or MLM kind of stuff? Are you seeing a lot of that still, or has that kind of gone to the wayside?
I think maybe it's gone to the wayside a little bit, but there is still this push of how can we make birth happen? Like how can we control it as much as possible?
How can we induce labor?
Right. So it's no longer, there is still the medicalized side of birth, and there are times for that. There's reasons for that. But then even in the natural home birth community, I see it a lot too, of like, how do we induce this? How do we make this happen? Even when we shouldn't be, there's no red flags to indicate it. And it's just been interesting. So many women now are inundated with social media, right? It's the blessing and the curse of our age.
I can't wait till I retire. I'm going to get rid of all of that and just go back to the flip phone. Yes, or maybe a landline.
Yes, it is the hardest part, I feel like, of running a business is social media, because I take it really seriously. If I'm going to put information out there, I want to make sure it makes sense and it's safe. and also make sense to the communities that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people don't have access to home birthing. I wish everyone did.
Yeah.
They don't have access to that. So how do we still give good educational information to women in a medicalized system and teaching them about nutrition and herbs that's going to help build their bodies? And I think that really gets lost in our communities. So that really has been the driving force behind studying clinical herbalism. I have no idea where it's going to take me. I just really want to help people, and I want to help plant those seeds of this is how you can build your body nutritionally and help it naturally before you have to end up with all these other tools.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I find that one of the big struggles, at least for my clinical work and my birth work, is now yet again, I'm in another maternal desert. Are you finding that your where you live, individuals are having a harder time accessing maternal services? And so services like yours are going to become more and more important, or do you feel like your community is really well served?
I feel like I live in central PA.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about maternal services from a medical standpoint, I mean, just where I live, I have access to 7 hospitals
Wow.
with labor and delivery within an hour of me. And I've served at all those hospitals.
That's awesome.
Now, the home birth community, we do have, I would say, a decent number of home birth midwives, but they're taxed, right?
Yeah.
They can only serve so many. So we're seeing a lot of burnout for them. And it breaks my heart because we need more. And we need more that are able to spend the time to educate women, because a lot of families, at least in my experience, are not thinking about how to take care of their bodies until they're growing another human.
Oh, yeah. Then there's a huge learning curve.
Yes. And so, you know, I love like looking at all the fancy, you know, herbalist social media pages and podcasts and all that. But the reality is I have a lot of background knowledge. These families that I'm working with, I mean, the thought of even buying organic is foreign to some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone telling them that an herb could really, it's not that they want to take red raspberry leaf to induce, right? That's what's in their head, is like, if I drink this tea, I will go into labor. No, we want to talk about the mineral content and why that's really good for your body. And I just feel like that education is lacking, even though we have an area that we live in that has a lot of resources. As far as herbalism, I feel like there is still this gap.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to figure out, how do we bridge that gap?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an important role that birth workers and herbalists are going to fill. I just hope that it can be filled in a sustainable and equitable way, because we are seeing in midwifery burnout, and we are seeing doulas burning out, and we are seeing, parents having postpartum care for like 4 or 6 months because they're just burning out too. And I think like work that you do can really help bridge the gap for people. I feel like a lot of things that are done in our culture to help young families are band-aids, where I think like herbalism and birth work are long-term solutions. Like people have a relationship with their midwife and their doula for a really long time. And I hope that we don't continue to navigate towards the Band-Aid solution. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So I'm glad that it sounds like you have a lot of resources for families. Do you feel like where you live, families are able to access them even if they're there, or is that still like out of
I
their
think,
reach at times.
yeah, it depends on the regional area that I'm working within at the time. Um, I think there are still areas that they just don't know those resources are available and it's hard to access them.
Well,
Um,
yeah, if you don't know, right?
right?
If you don't know.
Yeah. And I think too, I hate to say this, but doula work and herbalism is kind of going through this trendy thing recently,
Yeah.
which I love because it brings it to the forefront, right? And
Mm-hmm.
people start realizing like, oh, this is a real thing and it's needed in our communities. But with that often brings a lot of issues as
Oh,
well.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're pricing people out of being able to afford these resources.
Mm-hmm.
And it's soon, I think what I'm afraid of is that eventually there's going to be this gap because it became so trendy that, oh, I can't even look at that now because, I can't afford that or I don't have the resources for that. So I think that is a little bit of my fear. I see that a little bit in our communities. And so I hope it doesn't end up that way. I hope the trendiness of it brings education to the forefront and doesn't keep people resourced out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, as an education provider, I have noticed that I'm getting a lot more requests from people who are like, hey, I live in a state that's just allowing, they're going to start paying doulas. So, like, how much do I have to pay you to get
Mm,
certified? And I'm like, you have to enroll and do the work. You can't
right.
just fast track me. I've been to like a birth before and they get really rude. And I'm like, nope, nope,
Nope.
nope. Like, I want to be able to work with that state. So why would I shoot my foot off for you?
Yeah.
You're not
Yep.
paying me enough money. You want to pay me a few $1,000,000. Maybe I'll lose all integrity. Like, a lot of people, I don't know. No, but I mean, like, it's just funny because it's like the second third party billing and insurance steps in, it totally changes the dynamic. And I
It
think
really
that's
does.
bad because it's this band-aid solution, which I'm hoping that, we will be able to, as professionals, ride through the storm and, be part of the long-term solution.
Yeah.
So what drew you to herbalism?
Mm.
Like, do you have an aha moment or?
I think it was a slow roll. I love to garden. Garden is my therapy.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
Yeah, and it's my husband's hobby as well. So that's like our thing that we love to do together. I mean, we were outside last night until it was dark planting cabbages.
Let's do a permaculture course
Yeah,
together.
I mean, our dates get really nerdy. But I would say it started as that. As I'm planting my vegetable garden years ago, I was walking past the herbs and I had no idea what they did, but I knew they smelled good and they looked pretty. So I just started, year after year building my herb garden. And I have a daughter with some chronic illness and really started to realize Western medicine wasn't cutting it for us. They really just couldn't give us answers and how to help her.
Yeah.
So I started doing my own research. I mean, you talk about real grassroots education. I mean, I just started grasping at medical journal articles, anything I could find about herbs, herbal books. I mean, I was just pouring into how do I help my kid?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what started the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I moved into birth work and I started recognizing this isn't just a me and my kid problem. This
Yeah.
is a problem for so many families and they don't know where to start. And not everyone, I always say, not everyone has the capacity I think I was built with to get mad enough and self-motivated enough to just, you know, throw it all to caution and just do all the education and hard work. A lot of families feel very frozen by that. So when I started recognizing, hey, I need to start planting these seeds for families, this is how you can help your immune system. This is how you can help your kiddo with their eczema, and just start planting these seeds. That's when I really started realizing, you know what, I have all this random knowledge about herbs. I'm
gonna put it together now.
I'm gonna put it together. And sometimes I think, what was I thinking? Because kudos to you. This clinical herbalism program is amazing, but it is hard work, which I know is going to pay off in the end. But I mean, that's essentially what drew me into it, because I realized I need to take all of this random education I've gotten over the years to help my own family. I know this is probably somehow I'm going to end up in this field long term, whether it's I eventually don't want to live on call with birth work anymore. I'm still going to be working with some sort of herbal medicine. So that's essentially why I jumped in head first, and it has really taken me on a journey, to say the least.
So it sounds to me like you're walking around the plant store and the herbs are calling your name.
Yes, they really are. It's gotten to the point where my kids and my husband know if we're at a garden store, they try and steer me away and remind me I don't have any more room.
Somebody tackle mom.
Yeah.
Hey, I could think of a worse hobby. I could think of a worse career. I could think of a worse way to spend my time. I could think of so many other things that, and as far as like money drains, gardens aren't the worst.
Right. Exactly.
You could be like, hey, baby, we're gonna, blah, blah, blah. Put another barn up or something.
Right.
Or I want stone walls everywhere to the tune of $50,000 a foot or whatever. But yeah, no, I think it's funny because as I've been doing this series and talking to students and former students, I think the defining like common thread is like they almost felt like, okay, this was chosen for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, this is what we want you to do now. And, you fight it. And, I remember when I said to my husband, yeah, so like, look, I'm going to do this. Like, and I'd had an herbal business that was pretty successful, but I was like, I'm going to go. He's like, is anybody going to want that? Because nobody else was online doing it. Like him and my brother were just like, you're insane. And now they're like, well, yeah, but it's like, you just don't really have, I think it's like, there's some professions I feel that like really, like a librarian. I think if you're a librarian, you were called by the books. I'm like in some fantasy world. I'm like, I would have loved to be a librarian. Sure. It's like painters, I think, have that passion too, and herbalists. So I love that your family has to bait and switch and set traps for you at the plant stores.
Oh yeah.
There's not enough room in the trunk. So how did you start and why did you start your herbal business? I know that you were a successful birth worker and that you still are, but how did you transition into having an herbal business? Was it you felt there was like a need that wasn't being met, or clients wanted something from you, or were they just taking like the most dangerously kind of weird things and you're like, no, we've got to put a stop to this? Like what was your motivation?
All of the above.
Well, because it's true.
Well, what I was finding was, usually I was recommending, how do we up your nutrition, your mineral content, and and I would suggest different things. And usually I was getting stared at like I had four heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's great if you're buying the grocery store brand pregnancy teas, but the reality is you're only getting a tiny amount.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but even with some of the midwives I work with who have great herbal knowledge, they're passing out maybe one or two or three herbs put together and it tastes horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. Some herbs just taste like grass. That's the reality.
Oh, yeah. Or ass.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so how then do you try and persuade women, hey, in your really busy day, when you're already feeling not so great, I want you to drink grass,
Mm-hmm.
two
Well, you're
times
not
a
going to
day.
have compliance then. It's all
No.
about compliance, right? And making things easy for people. I love
Yeah.
that.
So that's kind of where it started was I'm just going to start experimenting. And I did a
Mm-hmm.
lot of research on what was safe and what would build, what are the building blocks of minerals
Yeah. Yeah.
in herbs and like, how do we blend this that makes women want to sit down and drink it. And that's basically where it started. It started with my own clients of being like, I have this prenatal tea. Great, had a baby, here's your postpartum tea. And
Mm-hmm.
then starting to hear from them, well, what do I do to keep my immune system up?
Mm-hmm.
And then so it just started kind of spiraling. And then it got to the point like, okay, this has to be sustainable. I can't when you're 2 years postpartum, I still can't be supplying you with free herbal teas.
Yeah.
you know, yeah, that can't happen anymore. So, it really branched out of that. I never thought I wanted to do retail. That was
Mm-hmm.
not the goal. I don't even know if that still is the goal. But it just came to the point where I'm like, hey, if I'm going to be able to help more people, and there were certain providers that were asking too, like, hey, I just had so and so in for their prenatal appointment. They really enjoy your tea blends. Can I start selling them in my office or recommend them?
Mm-hmm.
So it just came out of a necessity of, I guess there's a need. So I'm going to branch into this for now and see where it takes me.
The Heart of Herbs Herbal School Podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, well, there's so many herbal products out there, right? Someone's not going to want mine, right?
Right.
They can just go to the store or whatever. And I think that the unique thing about herbalism is that people trust you and then your product,
Right.
where we trust the product and then we fantasize about the owner of the business in other industries, right? We're like, oh, we're going to buy this product. And then we'll be like, oh yeah, their CEO is like such a guru or whatever. Right. And they put him up on a pedestal, where I think like herbalists, you have to trust the herbalist first,
Right.
because we're often making things just for you. We're listening to you, and there's that kind of custom thing going on, or the custom, even if you're not making a custom product for someone, you're really focusing on what you're seeing in your community. So if there's a lot of clients who are anemic or whatever, right? You have like this ability to, serve them all, right? In a way that is helpful and beneficial and creates trust between you. And I think people forget that so much of herbal product purchasing is really a trust-based relationship, because we think, oh, we'll just get it off of Amazon. And lots of people do. And there's nothing wrong with buying, I'm not saying that, but I am saying like, whenever I'm talking with like herbalists who are starting out with businesses or have young businesses, I'm like, don't forget the importance of that. And it sounds like people were trusting you and asking you for stuff before you were even ready, right?
Right.
Like before you were like, and you're still like, oh no, I'm only doing this.
I know it's, that's part of the journey, right? You have no idea where you're going to end up, and retail is not anything I thought I would end up with, but the doors keep opening. I just had a local market where I buy a lot of my herbs from say, can you just bring them in here and we'll sell them for you?
Well,
And
yes, yes, I can.
yes.
Will you
Yes,
pay
I
me
can. Thank
fairly
you
and
for asking.
equitably? Because then I definitely will.
Yeah. Which makes it more accessible then, right?
Yeah.
Someone might not want to pay for shipping, and I get that. I'm pretty cheap too. I hate paying for shipping. So, now I have a place where I can point people, hey, I might not be your doula, and so I can't deliver it to you. And you don't want to pay shipping on the website. Great. Here's your local market that you can go buy these teas. And so for me, I think it's the helper inside of me is like, great. It just provides more access to what is going to be helpful to these communities.
I love that. And I think the thing is sometimes you just want to buy something you see in the store.
Right.
You're like, that looks pretty. I want it, or that looks like it'll help. Right. And I think sometimes, I always say, like, sometimes people don't realize that they want something until they see it.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many things, like, the amount of money that as a culture we just spend on total crap every day, right? And then it's like there's something good there, and you have to be able to find a way through the noise to find the good. And sometimes people need to be able to touch and see that. And being in, your local shops is an awesome way to do that. So how did you transition from birth to the herbal world?
So I'm doing both right now.
Or transitioning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really thought that, I was naive when I walked into birth work. I really got into it because I wanted to help families, I wanted to educate, and I wanted to teach them how to advocate. And that came out of my own personal issues with the healthcare field of learning, these providers aren't bad guys, but they need to remember they're dealing with an individual. And so that's why I got into birth work, is I wanted to teach families you are an individual and you can ask questions and you can advocate. And so I thought I would just do this for the rest of my life. Turns out being on call 24/7 really does something to your adrenals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And so I reached a point.
Remember I mentioned I have to swim a lot?
Yeah, right? That's why I was like, that's amazing. Can I come over and swim?
Look, it's either going to be that or drinking, so I better get in the pool, right?
I would recommend the swimming, right? That's why I spend time in my garden.
No, but it does. That is something, we talk a lot about burnout in the birth world, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that we're constantly, our health is constantly being potentially, like body mechanics and hurting our backs and knees. And I cracked my sacrum at a birth once.
Oh gosh.
Years ago. And I finished. And then I went to the emergency room.
Oh, yeah, right? Because you have that adrenaline.
Yeah, you can't leave.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was cracked at the time. I just thought I really hurt my butt. But you don't realize those things, right? Or
right.
We're driving home in the middle of the night after being up for 48 hours or 12 hours even, and I think that not enough is spoken about in the birth community about that. So I love that you brought that up, and that, we got to take care of ourselves too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a reality after 6 years of I have to find a better pace, and I can't rely on being on call constantly. There's still aspects of it I love the like building relationships and the educating. But as I get older, it really is a thing. I mean, to try and recover from a birth that, a long 24-hour birth, and I have to recover, that's days, days of me like limping around and feeling in a fog.
My kids used to drive Matchbox cars over my body while I was trying to like just get a little bit of not really sleep because there was no one else home but me and the kids.
Yeah. Oh,
just
that's
like
a real
laying
thing.
there and they're
Yeah.
putting on some Scooby-Doo or something. Just
Yep.
needs just 20 minutes. No, it's true. It's true. What is your favorite thing about being an herbalist?
That's a really good question. I think, it sounds really simple. I like helping people figure out how to be more in tune with their bodies in a natural way. Nothing gets me more excited than someone coming up to me and asking me, hey, I have these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to help puzzle piece after hearing health history and the catalog of herbs in my head starts rolling of, oh, I bet that would be helpful and that would be helpful. And then just being able to sit down and really get creative and start crafting. I'm finding I really, really enjoy that part. And I think that's the part that really correlates into my birth work as well.
Mm-hmm.
I still love sitting down with I work with a lot of moms who, my niche, I would say, is a lot of moms who have had some form of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that looks like prior birth trauma. And so being able to sit with them and just hear what they're currently experiencing and the story behind that and helping them puzzle piece, this is how we get to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's interesting that is the part of herbalism I'm loving the most. Sure, I love, putting the teas together and bagging them up and putting the little labels on. Sure, that's fun right now, but I know that's not going to sustain me.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's going to sustain me is that continual listening to people's stories and helping them see the big picture and help them.
So it sounds like in your herbal work and your birth work, education and connection are two really important things for you.
Yeah, I think so.
I love that. I love that. So what are your herbal goals?
To finish this program.
Yes.
It has taken quite some time.
Well, it is 3,500 pages of content.
It is a lot. I was like, I'm just going to show you. I know no one can see it on the podcast, but like
that's okay. I will. Woo! Oh shoot! Is that your materia medica?
This is all of the like words and definitions.
Oh, sweet.
Because I was finding I would read through it, and I don't know if it's something about, I turned 40 last year, and I don't know if it's like a switch in your brain, like you can no longer retain information as easy. But I would get to the quizzes and I'd be like, why can't I remember any of this? So I just went back old school and I'm doing flashcards, and it's taking longer than I thought, but it's good for my kids to see. I homeschool. And so they're seeing like, not everything comes easy. Sometimes you really have to work at it. So it's been a good journey for them to watch.
I think it's really cool when kids get to see their parents like go and achieve goals. I remember when I was pregnant with my first child, I read a study saying that boys are more confident and have more like quote success as far as like happiness success if they see their mother achieve their goals and if their mother goes to school. And so as soon as he was born, I finished my bachelor's degree with him on my lap. But I mean, like, it was just like one of these things. I was like, okay, if I can't do anything else, because we homeschool too. So I know that there's this balance of like trying to run a business, going to births, homeschooling, especially when they're little.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to see some stupid babies, why can't you be home? That kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And then the other thing is, why do the ladies always hug you in the grocery store?
Oh yeah.
It was at their birth,
Yep. Who's that? Who's that person? Don't worry about it.
No more hippies.
Yep.
So I definitely get the whole, I think it's so important for them to see us, our children, to see us as human beings.
Yeah.
To see us whole and achieving things, and letting them realize too that us achieving our goals doesn't mean that we're any less of a parent to them or loving to them, or I think it's really cool. I loved homeschooling. I thought it was great. I probably loved it more than my kids did, but
I think
we tried to do the Waldorf thing and they weren't having it.
Yeah.
But so what do you feel like is did we finish going over your goals? I think I interrupted you, didn't I?
No, we probably didn't. Other than finishing the program, I think I realized this year I'd really like to find I'm hoping a local mentor.
Nice.
Just because a big thing for me with my blends, I had someone ask me once, they messaged me on Instagram, and they said, you don't use a lot of fancy herbs in your blends. And it made me laugh because I'm like, well, who gets to say what's fancy and what's not? But
yeah, there's some like red raspberry leaf that's out there like, excuse me,
right?
Are you kidding? I'm so fancy, I got thorns and a berry crown.
Yep. But I want people to have access to this stuff. Like, I want them to fall in love. I know this sounds crazy. I want them to fall in love with that postpartum tea, that they're like, I really loved the look and the smell and the taste of that. I wonder if I can recreate it. Mm-hmm. Great. Everything in there you can grow locally in your garden. Mm-hmm. So I want to be able to find a mentor locally that is on the same page, and just be able to bounce ideas off of them and get to hear what other people are seeing in this community and how we can continue the education. I haven't been real successful yet in finding that person, but I have to believe they're somewhere.
I think it's hard because I think like in the birth world, people assume that if you are wanting guidance or collaborative guidance or whatever you want to call it, that you're out to get their business. Yeah, you're out to, and it's sad because it's just sad. Have you looked at the American Herb Society? I think it has chapters around the country, or American. I'll see if I can email me, and I'll see if I can send you. I know there's groups, or you should start one.
I know, I did think about that. My husband reminds me there are so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
No, but that is a real thing. And so I have been hesitant to reach out to even like people that are within like a 2 to 3 hour radius, because like you were saying, I hear that a lot in the birth world. I try and always make it a point. Like, if a newer birth worker reaches out to me, I don't live in that scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pick up your call. We're going to talk on the phone. I'm going to answer your questions, because the reality is I have so much birth work that I have to refer out to people at this point. And I also don't want to be on call for the rest of my life. So I'm excited when people recognize the good job that I'm doing and ask those questions. So I've been a little fearful of reaching out, just because I don't want other herbalists to I guess I'm afraid to find out if they have that scarcity mindset, because I know we won't be a good fit, because the goal is to educate and help each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. I feel like, I always feel like such an oddball in the herbal world. And I think that I am, because I just think of things differently. I'm always like solution based, and how can we get to the other side of this? And I don't care what other people are doing. So, like I don't look at other schools' websites or, it's like, I think I have like a lecture that's like, if you spend all day looking at your competition's websites and
Right.
products or what they're doing, you're not spending time on yourself. So I'd rather honestly be swimming than like, dealing with what someone else is doing and thinking. But I think that because it's become such a cash, this is like $1 billion industry, right?
Right.
I think that when that happens, we lose some of the other stuff. I think you're going to find someone soon.
Yeah, I have to. So just real quick on that, I just wanted to let you know, when you offered to have me on the podcast, I went through and listened to like all of your episodes. I was really excited because podcasts are a real thing for me, driving in the middle of the night to a birth. That's what keeps me awake. And hearing your origin story was like a breath of fresh air. It was the reality of, oh, I'm not the only one that feels like this. I'm not the only one that feels like I don't fit in this community. And so I just wanted you to know, like, I just really appreciated you sharing that part of your story, because I do think it's this is all needed to help bring in everyone, and so they don't get stuck in this fear-based mentality, or feeling like they don't fit in, so that they can't do this work.
Yeah, that always, like, I almost cry sometimes when someone calls me and they're like, I've always wanted to be an herbalist. I found your course. I'm not sure if like I'm the right kind of person. And I'm like, well, what do you mean?
Right.
Do you want to study herbs? Yeah. That's all you need to be. But I don't do this, or I don't do that. I don't practice this, or I'm like, who gives a shit? Who cares? Like,
exactly.
we need, and I learned this lesson really, really early on about how herbalists aren't a type. I think it was like in 2001 or 2002. A group of truck drivers one of them called, and they ordered the program for a group of them. And they would talk about their homework over the CB. And they'd mail in their homework, right?
Love it.
And it just blew my mind, because I was like, I'm so young still at this point. I mean, I'm not even 30, right? And I'm like, wait, so you don't have, you're like, okay, so I'm with them, right? The motorcycles, the truck drivers, the people who follow the Grateful Dead, the people who've worked in restaurants and been waiters and waitresses, people who've written books, and people who, tried to make a slipcover for their own sofa, failed epically. Like, those are my people, like regular, normal people.
Yes.
But the herbal world can be hard sometimes. And I think we don't talk about it because it's painful. It's painful to feel like you can go to an event or a conference and not feel like you belong in that space. And that's what I hear from students all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't feel like I belonged. People were looking at me funny. I didn't have the right clothes. And I'm like, there is no right clothes.
Right.
Were you naked? Well, no, then you're probably fine. And then half of those conferences, nobody care anyways, right? Yeah. I'm a naked guy. Okay, naked guys for the class. I mean, and it's a huge lesson to us, because we are doing what society is doing to us. As a community, we're saying these people don't fit, these people don't belong. And that's what, at least I feel society does to us every day, right?
Right.
Tells us everything that's wrong with us and why we can't be in a space. And I'm tired of it. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I know I kind of went on there, but
No, that's
It's
great.
hard. It's hard to, I guess, stay an original. Just be
Yeah.
yourself, even when it clearly, it's not always the best route for, but no, so I would have never thought that you would feel like that. So
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome's a real thing, right? I mean, 6 years into birth work, I have to turn away the amount of families that inquire every week. And I still am like, am I good at this? You know what I mean? And now, now working in the herbalist field and having a market approach me to have my blends, and I'm like,
did they get the right number?
Yeah, maybe I should redo my labels. They aren't gonna look, you know what I mean? Just like dumb stuff.
The
And it's
stuff we tell ourselves, right?
yeah, and it's the reality of I just need to stop. A lot of people will say to me, "How do you not care? You just look like you don't care. You look like you're pretty calm." And I'm like, well, come talk to my husband, first of all. I'm sure he'll give you quite the
My
story.
best friend knows it all.
Yeah. The reality is you don't know what's going on in someone's brain. And I think I've learned that in the birth world and also the herbalism community is like, you might look like you play the stereotypical part of that herbalist, but you're probably feeling just as crazy inside as everyone else.
I think
So
that's true, right?
the goal is just to be yourself. And when I'm in that zone and I'm being myself and I'm pushing all the other influences out, I'm thriving.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And people are
that's
going
the
to
goal.
connect with you because you're just you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is no just about it, but there isn't any other place to go. Like
Exactly.
you're all they're going to get. There's no fake. And I think people need that more than, you hear all this, buzzword authentic and this and that, all that kind of stuff all the time. Right. But the reality is that the people actually do need that.
Yeah, they do.
We have businesses that are like, oh yeah, sorry, we put lead in that. Like, oh, since when was lead allowed in a drinking cup? Or in crayons, or in, why are we putting melamine in infant formula? Like, we have all these things that are lying to us. So when people know that, okay, I may not always say what you want to hear,
right?
but I'm definitely not going to lie to you.
I may not have the
like
best filter, but you're going to love me at the end of the day.
Or the best email voice. I am told I'm cold via email, and I'm like, I just answer the question. I don't mean to sound like like you sound like that. You're so mean. I'm like, no, the answer was no.
Oh my
God. They just said, nope, that's okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. But the reality is that you can't, if I started writing these really flowery emails, everybody would be like, she's lying. Something's wrong.
I'd be like, are you
holding
okay?
her hostage? Is this an SOS? So I think people need that. I love that you offer that to people. So tell us a little bit more about the kind of products you have and where people can find you.
Sure. Well, right now, all of the blends on my website, which is birthwayherbs.com, is specifically for families. They're safe for pregnancy and breastfeeding. And if there is a blend that goes up there, because maybe it was a custom blend that lots of people were asking for, and if there's something in there that's not safe, it will say on that. It's very clear, the labeling. But right now it's prenatal and postpartum teas. I have one for tea for after cesareans, herbal bath blends.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
it's not just teas. A lot of stuff.
That's the only one that really I did an elderberry kit, when I first launched, just because everyone was, it was the dead of winter when I decided, like, I guess I'll put this website up.
Yeah.
And that's all anyone wanted. And that's a trendy thing too. It's like, everyone wants their elderberry. I love elderberry. So that was the only, like, I would say massively non it didn't really go with the theme of the website, but it worked. So
I'm waiting for bilberry to have its moment in the sun.
oh, yes.
Bilberry syrup. I love all different kinds of berries. Like, I just think they're the most amazing medicine. And so I'm always excited when people like come up with stuff and,
All right, that might be on the list. I have like the running whiteboard of just, as things pop in my head, I'm like, oh, that'll be like my next, fun thing to experiment with.
Yeah, lots and lots of fun. I am so grateful that you joined us today.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have a Facebook page?
Only for my birth work. So
Okay.
Everything on
How can people who want you to do birth work for them find you? Or if they want to consult with you?
Yeah, so it's birthwaydoula.com, Birthway Doula on Instagram and Facebook. And in all of those formats, you can link directly to my Herbal site as well. Like it all is intermeshed right now. So
awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate it. I can't wait to hear about more of your journey. So I may be circling back to you in a few months and getting an update. And yeah, please keep doing the work you do. It's so needed and it's so necessary. And I think every community would benefit from having a you on the block. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Interested in learning more? Visit heartofherbs.com and enroll using coupon code PODCAST to save 20%. The content provided in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or medical condition. It's always recommended to consult a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, or health regime, especially if you have an existing health condition. Any of the financial information and advice for starting or maintaining an herbal business is just that, information. It's not used to be a guideline on how you should run your business. Contact the appropriate professionals to help you to have a successful business.